Welcome to Roundhouse Roulette, a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast. Well, thanks for joining us as we recap and review one of the 200 existing Walker, Texas Ranger episodes randomly selected by Roundhouse Roulette. I'm Evan Dalton, here with my brother Adam.
What's going on?
And Mr. Bob Bowdier Sensei Leahy.
Hello.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us as we catch up with each other and also catch up with the ill-fated Walker, Texas Rangers spin-off attempt. That's right. Today we'll be recapping and reviewing Season 5, Episode 25, Sons of Thunder Part 2. And this is the thrilling conclusion of a spin-off with Carlos and Trent. And, it's juicy. But
certainly, yeah.
Before the three of us dust off our 9th degree black belts and our DVD copies of Three Ninjas, join us as we pull up a stool at CD's Bar and Grill. Well, all right. Fancy meeting you guys here. It's been a bit.
I know, man, with the holiday and your new baby, and I had a cold that I wasn't sure if it was COVID, but I'm just glad we'll get together and break bread here and chow down on some Walker.
Well, before we chow down on Walker, perhaps we should slake our thirst with a fine craft beer. Let's see what CD's got on tap for us this time.
It looks like CD's catering to our Massachusetts origins here.
I think so. Yeah. And, he knows that home is where the heart is. And, I think our heart is a thinly veiled reference to the Dropkick Murphys song Shipping Out of Boston. So.
Oh, that's what this is referencing?
Isn't that song Shipping Up to Boston?
Oh, thank God. Yeah, all right. You're right.
Okay, well, yeah, Evan, you're a really big Dropkick Murphys fan, dude.
The hugest, really. I know that song, and yeah, that's about it.
The only band from Boston is Aerosmith. We don't acknowledge any others.
It's true. It really is. I mean, there are others, like the Pixies and the Cars.
The Cars, Jay Giles Band.
Yeah, arguably better than Aerosmith, but I'm not going to make that argument.
Whoa.
I'm just saying some might. But yeah, America's self-proclaimed greatest rock and roll band.
That's rock and roll to self-proclaim that you're the best. There's nothing more rock and roll than that.
That is pretty rock and roll. And, knock on wood, but all of them are all still alive, so they can lay claim to that too. So that's pretty good. Anyways, this is a Shipping Out of Boston amber lager from not quite Boston, but it is from some fine brewers in Framingham, Mass, which is just outside of Boston, at a brewery called Jack's Abbey.
According to the menu, Shipping Out of Boston celebrates the rich and storied manufacturing history of New England. I guess in beer form. I don't know if I want to taste manufacturing, but we built this beer with local ingredients inspired by the factories that were once world suppliers. It is a malty, sweet, and lightly hopped amber lager that pays homage to the past while manufacturing a bold future.
Oh, I see what they did there, manufacturing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think I kind of want to ship out of Boston and into my mouth. What do you guys say about that?
I'm not going to respond to that.
Yeah, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that.
It is an amber color, so
sure is.
They're right there.
Oh, I just took one sip, and I feel like I just consumed an industry of taste.
Yeah, that's pretty good. What fine news has reached our deep, dank hole that we live within?
Well, it looks like Chuck Norris is kicking off the new year in a fine fashion, according to his Instagram page.
Well, I mean, this doesn't seem right. Like, Chuck Norris staying fit as his New Year's resolution? Come on. That's like me, pledging to drink beer. Like, I was going to do it anyway, but now it's my resolution.
There's a picture of him looking pretty mean with some boxing gloves.
Now, is that a total gym in the background behind him?
Yeah, his most recent post on Instagram is an ad for Total Gym. He's still doing it.
That's awesome.
But he's like, staying fit and healthy continues to be one of my main goals going into the new year. What are some of your New Year's resolutions? Well, I guess Bob's is to drink more beer. Evan, what do you got?
Watch more Walker, I guess.
I mean, that's not really a resolution. That's just like a lifestyle that we've kind of committed to already.
Same thing with Chuck Norris's resolution. And mine.
That's how you maintain your resolution there. You do something you know you're going to be doing anyways.
Okay. I'm going to take a karate class this year.
Wow.
Just one.
Yeah, just going into it knowing that, too. It's just the one and only class I'm going to take with you.
Because I never took a karate class growing up, and I think it could provide some insight to this podcast.
Bob, did you ever take a karate class?
No, I didn't.
Again, we are the three least qualified guys to be doing a podcast about Walker, Texas Ranger, really.
Oh, yeah, totally.
We're from Massachusetts, never taken a martial arts course at all. Now, that's saying something because in southeastern Massachusetts, I would say there are like 3 business models that work. 1, a gas station. 2, a pizza and sub shop. And 3, a karate dojo. And for us not to have even stepped foot in a karate dojo is kind of crazy to me.
I don't know. I don't remember walking by any dojos.
Our small town had like 10 or 11 pizza shops. But I'm in a different town now, and we've got 2 karate dojos.
Well, that's only natural because you have the good one, and then you've got the rival dojo.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah, absolutely.
You have Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai.
Remember when I was checking Craigslist for total gyms, and I found one for, was it like $80?
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't pick that up.
I should have then, because after the new year, they're up around $200, $400 because they know people are like, oh, now's the time.
Now's the time.
Dude, give it a couple weeks. They'll go back down.
Yeah, I'm gonna be watching them. And no, that's my New Year's resolution. I'm going to acquire a total gym and report the results here on this podcast.
I'd say wait till at least March to get a good price on it. Okay, it's like buying a snowblower in December. You don't do it.
I mean, the beautiful thing is if you buy low, you can sell high.
Yeah. Well, after I'm totally ripped like Chuck Norris, then I'm going to sell it.
Right, just let it all go.
Get any price you want.
Since we are dealing with the Sons of Thunder episode here, which is kind of like a pilot episode in Walker, Texas Ranger for a spinoff, it did happen, and I think they lasted about 6 episodes and it was canceled. The show Sons of Thunder itself had crossover cameos from Walker and Alex, so at some point we're going to have to get this. Obviously, after we've dissected every single Walker, Texas Ranger episode, we're going to have to dig into the Sons of Thunder to see what's up, because there might be a few Chuck Norris roundhouse kicks in that show. And I don't want to miss that. You know what I'm saying?
Actually, no, Adam, I think we could make this a side project for you. You can take this one on.
While I'm using my total gym, I can be watching Sons of Thunder. That's what you're saying. Okay.
And you know what, Adam? Just like Chuck Norris kind of moonlighted in Sons of Thunder, but it was really run by 2 new guys. I think what you really need to do is do a spin-off podcast with 2 guest hosts that are not Bob or me.
Who are like 10 times hotter than you guys, right?
I don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's a podcast. No one cares if they're hot.
So the TV show Sons of Thunder, since it was only aired 6 episodes, they never released a DVD. You can't stream it anywhere. Occasionally, they'll play it on TV, but it's nowhere to be found except the creepiest website I've ever seen. Do you guys want to pull this up?
No.
I'd rather
no,
not
I don't.
click on that.
No.
It's called hardtofindtv.com, and it looks like they take shows like this and make their own bootleg copies.
Wow, yeah. Fan-made DVD. Wow.
Well, the best part, it says, I'm very sorry, but right now we are only accepting Amazon Pay. If you don't want to or cannot pay using Amazon Pay, you can visit our sister page here.
Don't click on it.
Oh.
No.
Oh, Adam just went into the Matrix.
Yeah. What they did was they ripped all the episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger that the Sons of Thunder appear in, and then all 6 episodes of Sons of Thunder, and put it in a set. So if you're really into Carlos and Trent, and that's your favorite era of Walker, Texas Ranger, there is a fan-made DVD out there on the internet that someone's selling originally for $150, marked down for $30 sale here.
That's a really slash price. Now, it does say shipping calculated at checkout. And since this also comes with the total gym, just be prepared to to get slammed with a real big bill.
Yeah. at some point, Evan's going to have to roll the dice and order this DVD. We're not saying you should buy a bootleg DVD, but we are saying that, come on, Sons of Thunder, CBS, release it. All right, well, definitely the highlight of Sons of Thunder Part 1 was the unbelievable hot air balloon to hot air balloon vehicular transference. I did a little research in the meantime here, and the title is, and this is from the Longview News Journal, East Texas ballooning pioneer gives back to sport he loves. This is an article on Bill Bussey, and he was the guy in the hot air balloon that Walker commandeered and jumped out of.
Oh, wow.
So he was the pilot.
There's a quote from him. I actually call flying a quiet intrusion into God's space. So
he's
Walker
earned
train.
15 world records and 29 U.S. records for distance and duration in hot air balloons. Wow. The sport even landed him an actor's credit as older balloon pilot on the 1997 episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, where the titular Kung Fu Cowboy, played by Chuck Norris, jumped from Bussey's balloon on top of the bad guy's balloon, climbed down the rigging, and slugged it out with the villain, eventually landing the balloon. In reality, Chuck Norris's stunt double, Kinnie Gibson, jumped from the balloon and quickly pulled his parachute, which was later edited with studio footage. Gibson was a good friend of Bussey's and well known to Longview balloonists. Gibson and Bussey met through ballooning, and Gibson initially asked him if he wanted to be on the show. He said, "We took off and brought the balloon back to the same place," Bussey said with a smile. He said, "You can't do that. It was kind of a hokey thing. I was paid a reasonable amount of money for it, and I still get dividends."
Ooh, nice.
Syndication, baby.
Yeah, shout out to him there. I'm glad that he's kind of reaping the rewards. But again, Kinnie Gibson, amazing guy here. Unfortunately, after all the crazy stuff this guy did as far as stunts and whatnot, cancer got him, of all those things. So he died too early, really.
Well, first off, his memorial service sounds awesome. People are told not to wear suits and to bring a bathing suit and towel, so pretty awesome. He began his ballooning career, and he found himself flying corporate balloons and touring Australia with Evel Knievel. Later, he used his ballooning skills to start a Hollywood stunt career, flying hot air balloons in Disney's Night Crossing. And he received the Best Aerial Stuntman Award for his filming of the TV series Fall Guy. He was into the Great Texas Hot Air Balloon Race, and he was also the creator of the Rocket Man persona and flew over 600 flights, including 2 Super Bowls and a flight around the Egyptian Sphinx, the rededication of the Statue of Liberty, as well as on many TV shows, including the A-Team, Knight Rider, and Chips. They should have included Walker, Texas Ranger here, too. But he served as the double for Chuck Norris on 204 episodes of Walker, and in many of his feature films.
Unbelievable. Before he passed away, I guess they kind of knew that he was getting weaker, and he was able to come watch one of these balloon events, and all the balloons performed a splash and dash. What they do is they bounce their balloons off the Lake Cherokee and then go back up in the air. And so they wheeled him out to the deck so he could see that. And he got to see all his balloon buddies one more time before he passed away. Unbelievable. This guy lived a crazy, amazing life. And he was Walker, Texas Ranger.
Pretty much. Like when you see Walker jump out of a tree into a roundhouse kick, that could have been Kinnie.
Anyway, we got to give a shout out to Kinnie Gibson because he made Sons of Thunder Part 1 amazing. According to me, it was a 10. So we are talking about Walker, Texas Ranger here. So I thought we might dig into this next news real quick. Bob, you want to take this one?
Yeah. Looks like Fender is going to put out a new model of guitars here. They got a Stratocaster and Telecaster, only available at Guitar Center, by the way.
Well, that's kind of a minus, but
yeah, it is. Well, no, it kind of makes sense though.
But why is it? Why is this relevant to a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast?
Well, because the finish is denim, and I'm looking at these and I'm like, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess they look.
I was
like,
hoping it was going to be actual denim.
Yeah,
Instead of like a glossy finish.
Yeah,
they were just like form the denim around the body of the guitar. I think that would be better. But what do you guys think? You think this is going to take off?
No.
They look ugly as sin.
Yeah, they look really bad.
But yeah, they're like the Tiger Sunburst kind of guitars, but they did it with blue.
Right. It's like someone took a really gorgeous piece of tiger striped maple, then dyed it blue.
Yeah. Dipped it in food color.
Why would you do that?
And essentially burned a tree down.
Yeah. They are hideous.
Yeah.
What are they catching for these? $30? Oh, no, it's something else.
They were like $2,500.
Ugh.
Guitar Center, get on YouTube, watch some guitars made out of unconventional materials, and then maybe you can come back to us with an actual denim Fender guitar. Otherwise, stop ruining good pieces of wood by dipping it into blue Kool-Aid.
And good guitars, too.
These guitars look like ass. Okay.
They look bad.
Terrible.
Yeah.
They probably were like, what happens if we dunk it in blue dye? And then it came out and someone was like, dude, that looks like a pair of whiskered jeans.
Yeah, send it to the marketing department. Maybe we can unload these on Guitar Center. Aren't they going bankrupt?
$2,500.
Well, lastly, Evan, we got to give a shout out to somebody here.
Yeah, we'd love to give a shout out to podcast supporter Aaron out in El Cajon, California. He actually was perusing our shop, and his eyes graced the lovely "May the Eyes of the Ranger Be Upon You" print, exclusively available on our shop
At roundhouseroulette.com.
At roundhouseroulette.com. And, he threw it in his shopping cart, and you know what he did?
He checked out.
Yeah, he checked that baby out. So thank you very much for helping support the podcast, and I hope you find a great place to put that print. And
fine piece of art.
That puppy's fit for framing, and I hope it features prominently in your design scheme. And I think there's a decent chance that you have no idea our podcast exists. But if you ever hear this, please share a pic of where you end up putting that thing. So we've got quite a bit to cover here, and let's get on into it. If you're watching along at home and do not want any spoilers, hit that pause button and watch part 2 of Sons of Thunder, which is season 5, episode 25, and come right on back to us. All right, welcome back. So this is the continuation of our 2-part series, Sons of Thunder. And, it opens up on pretty epic little Texas Ranger recap there.
Yeah, and we were wondering about it because one of the last 2-parters we watched didn't even have a recap.
That's true. That's true.
For the purposes of this podcast and rating part 2, this recap, it can't count. It wouldn't be prudent.
Anyways, back to the TV show at hand. We get a recap from Sons of Thunder Part 1, and I'll be honest with you, pretty necessary. Not because...
It was.
Not only because I hadn't watched it for... I watched Part 1 a long time ago, but also because a ton happens, and none of it is really interconnected. So this recap, I mean...
Do we need to go through?
I don't think we have to go through. I don't think we have to go through most of this recap. Let's just read off the bullet points because you've probably listened to Roundhouse Roulette episode 49. But let's just go through it. First off, Chuck Norris, he's a badass, and Walker can jump from hot air balloon to hot air balloon. So there's that. Then some random dude dies at a baseball game. His family doesn't know what to do. Their son, who is like 30 years older than the other kids, comes home. Also, there's someone out there with ridiculous boots with silver tips, like snakeskin boots with silver tips, who's just randomly shooting cops and then crossing their faces off in dramatic fashion with a giant Sharpie. Walker and Trent Malloy have a weird bromance going on where they spar shirtless and get really sweaty together. And Trent Malloy doesn't know what he's doing with his life, and so he's talking to his dad's grave. And Trent's little brother, who's like, he looks like a front man from like a 50s doo-wop quartet. He gets his butt whooped at high school by a guy who's like 30, who's apparently still in high school. And inexplicably, the kids at high school know how to do roundhouse kicks, and they're just like savage.
Right. Yeah.
We get a slight snippet from some random forensic psychologist saying the cop killer knows the people he's killing because the shootings are close range and face to face. Then we learned that Trent, as a child, had an accident with a gun while Carlos was there and shot some kid. And we get this really awful sepia tone flashback of this kid dying with a gun accident.
Oh, God.
And they even cover this again. They cover this really dumb detail again where Carlos is like, well, how are you in the military if you don't shoot guns? And Trent's like, well, I was able to use my fight training and I taught hand-to-hand combat in the army. Also, his hair is ridiculously awesome, but I don't think his hair is military grade. Thoughts?
Yeah, no. You can't have that kind of hair in the military.
Well, I mean, in the martial arts unit, they did.
Yeah, he is kind of special ops.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're like, look, pretty boy, you got a crew cut or nothing. What are we doing here? And Walker then mentions still afraid of heights to Carlos because Carlos is at the crime scene from the most recent cop that's murdered.
Because he was like, oh, I better jump in the hot air balloon with Walker when he's going up. But then he's like, oh, I'm afraid of heights. I mean, really a shout out to the writers here because that piece of information was vital to include in the recap, as we'll find out. So pretty much Walker goes up to Carlos and he's like, still afraid of heights. And then they zoom in on the murderer's next victim on his murder board, and it's Carlos. To be continued.
Very long recap because they're trying to fit a crap load of information in. Now, to this, I would also say, if you're putting this thing out there as essentially a pilot, made for TV sort of pilot for these types of things, never mind, I've figured it out. It's because when this came out, people didn't have DVRs. It's not like they're going to watch these one in front of the other. So this would have happened the week prior. So people need that refresher.
Well, no, this debuted as one whole movie.
Like the recap must have just been made for the DVD release?
Syndication.
Or maybe
For syndication.
Yeah, for syndication.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, that explains why it's so in depth because otherwise people would be thrown right into the madness.
Well, not really the madness. Thrown into the Malloy house where Trent is training his two younger, his younger brother and sister.
Yeah. And keeping in mind that the Trent is like 36 and these kids are like, 6 and 9?
They're in the front yard and he's teaching them like karate moves and like, yeah, great. That's great form. But then Tommy, who's kind of had a rough relationship with Trent.
Trent left for the military and kind of left Tommy as the oldest brother. And, a lot of the responsibility fell on him.
Tommy, he's getting his ass beat at school by ninjas. And, so
as happens frequently.
Yeah. So he walks down and Trent's like, hey, man, you should train with us. And I was expecting for a minute for him to be like, I don't need you to help me. But instead, he's just kind of just like, oh, okay.
Right. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, we don't have time to make this a big deal,
I was just going to say that the pace of the episode basically stayed the same as the recap,
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
here's 5 seconds of one scene. Someone will say something. All right, next scene. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
Shout out to the editors of this episode. So, they're doing their kicks. And did you guys notice that when Tommy's younger siblings were doing their roundhouse kicks, they had to add their own hi-kiyas? But when Tommy is training, we know that he's got potential because when he does a kick, there's a swoosh. They added a sound effect swoosh for Tommy.
Oh, no.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't. Wow.
Yeah, so he's got, you can tell he's got the inner workings of a true ninja. So anyways, they're practicing their martial arts and Carlos stops by. Again, like Carlos and Trent are like childhood friends, but I don't quite get the closeness of their relationship.
Well, when you are hanging out with your best friend, right? And you're over their friend's house, right? And you're like, oh, let's have some other friends over too. And let's bring out dad's gun. Then your friend shoots another kid. You're linked together for life.
Or you never see them again.
Well, this is the opposite scenario where instead of never seeing them again, that just bonded them together forever.
Okay. So Carlos, just pulls in with his police cruiser because, why not? And then someone calls in a police scanner, and he's like, okay, I guess I better go like actually work now. And so he goes to this domestic disturbance call, and we realize he's being trailed by this like skeezy gray car.
Well, we saw the car before he even got the call. Like everything in this episode was so on the nose, but it happened so fast too.
Yeah, that they had to kind of double up because they might have missed it the first time because it was edited so fast. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the cop killer murderer is driving this like beater car, and we see a shot from inside the murderer who's yet to have been revealed. And he's got like a police scanner. So he's actually, that's how he's been tracking down all the cops he's killing, and how he zeroed in on Carlos here.
You see, that was a Radio Shack police scanner too.
Oh, it was branded, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't catch the model number though.
Bob used to work at Radio Shack, so he's really clued into that. We get the picture that someone is trailing Carlos and getting ready to murder him. But another cop pulls up just in time as this guy gets out of his car. We see his boots. These black leather boots with silver tips heading towards Carlos. But another cop car pulls up, and this guy dives back into his car and drives away. And honestly, the woman police officer, her line is one of my favorites that I'd heard. She's like, oh, what's going on? And Carlos says, false alarm. And she says, best kind of alarm there is. Just a really good cop line.
Yeah.
So Walker and Trivette are recapping back at the headquarters, recapping the other cop killings.
Right. And so this scene here seems a waste because in the previous episode, we already learned what they're going to talk about here.
Which is basically that the murder victims, all of them police officers, knew their killer.
And he's like, oh, well, looking at this picture, I can see that the safety strap was off his gun, but the gun was not taken out. And he sensed danger, but didn't pull the trigger, so he must have known the shooter.
Yeah, they seem completely convinced that that's the case. They're like, oh, definitely. Well, okay. Slam dunk that case.
Cut to next scene.
And now we're at the mall.
With Trent and Carlos. This actually is my favorite and shortest scene. They cut to the mall and Trent and Carlos are hanging. And Carlos is like, how's Tommy doing? And Trent's like, he's doing real good. And then they cut and flash to the next scene. And he's getting his ass beat in the basement of the high school, Freddy Krueger style.
I know, it's a savage. These kids, I don't know how these kids know freaking ninja kicks, but they're just like,
well, we find out
him.
because they go to Cobra Kai. Right?
They do.
But yeah, the two scenes before the fight scene could have just been omitted.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. So we see Tommy getting beat up again at school. It looks like the basement of the high school, right?
Yeah.
We flash back to the Malloy house, and Trent is fixing the oven because he's, dad of the house,
Well, yeah, Tommy comes home and he's just like bloodied all over, and he's not as resistant to Trent's help this time. And Trent's like, what the hell happened? I just trained you. You should be able to take these kids out. And Tommy's all like, no, man, they go to this dojo. They're really good.
They've actually gone to that dojo more than one day, too.
And he's like, they really know their karate. And Trent goes, they know nothing about karate. And I expected him to like justify that and be like, karate's not seeking out a fight. But nope, he just like, it's just next a cut scene. There. Yep.
Next scene.
He drives to Cobra Kai. That's essentially what he does.
He basically acts like his brother's mom and goes to the dojo. Storms in there, all Karen'd up.
Yep.
And tells him that if your kids beat up my little brother again, I'm going to come here and beat you up.
Yeah, and he says this to like the rival sensei who's in black.
Currently beating up one of his students in the middle of the ring. Yeah. Now, normally you'd see that and you'd be like, oh, that's just like abuse. Like, why is he beating somebody up in the ring? But that's exactly the training technique that Trent used when he was in the military, right?
Ah, yes, it's true. That's true.
Like, come at me. I'm going to wreck you.
Yeah, pretty much he's like, some of your students beat up my brother. If they do it again, I'm going to come back here and wreck house on you. And the guy's like, oh, maybe you should sign him up for some karate lessons.
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
And Trent's like, he doesn't need your kind of lessons. And then he just walks out.
Yeah. And the guy's like, don't you walk away from me.
But it's too late. He's sped away on his motorcycle.
Yeah. Oh, he's on his dumb motorcycle.
Yeah, I wish he had his blue Corvette, but...
The blue ragtop Corvette was sick. The motorcycle, really dopey because he has to put his helmet on.
Oh,
and it just looks really dumb.
Yeah.
If these episodes are like 5 years older, no helmet. I feel like that was the point where like, okay, we need to have helmets on now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's really unfortunate.
We switch back to Ranger headquarters. We see Trivette hacking through like some arrest reports, and he's talking to Walker. He's like, all the dead cops were good cops. So it's not like they were into anything shady.
Of course, yeah.
And then this next part was kind of weird because Walker was told to brief the city council on these murders of these cops. And he's resenting having to go do mundane work. I don't think we've seen Walker really do anything he didn't want to do before.
Well, you know, this is his chance to grease palms and stuff, but he's just trying to get out of it a little bit.
He tries to pawn it off on Trivette, but Trivette's like, no, man, I'm good.
I'll be here on Alta Vista.
Yeah.
Back at the Malloy house, Trent pulls up, and his brother Tommy's playing basketball, right? He's sinking some sick baskets, getting nothing but net. And Trent pulls up in his motorcycle, which is crazy loud, right? And Tommy doesn't pay any attention. And then Trent takes off his helmet and goes, "Hey, Tommy!" And then Tommy acts like he just noticed him. It's not like he was ignoring him or anything. He's like, "Oh, he's here." He must have been really concentrated on that game of basketball. And Trent's all proud because he's like, "Hey, you know, those kids aren't going to bother you anymore. Because I went to their dojo and talked to their sensei. It's all cool now."
Yeah, it's like, yeah, your mom goes and tries to defend you against a whole gang of bullies who are now going to come down even harder on you for doing it. Yeah. That's like, no.
And Tommy's just like, I mean, his reaction is pretty straightforward. It's like, what?
That's all that happens there, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Back to another edit to someone with a gun reading some headlines about the investigation. And we're kind of wondering at this point, is this guy the killer? You know?
Yeah, because he's like has a gun on the table. He's got like a glass of whiskey, and he's kind of reading a newspaper that like says Walker's investigating, and if you have tips to call into the Ranger headquarters. I actually have the newspaper. Do you want to take a look at it?
Is it just a newspaper with like Walker's picture taped to it?
It looks like they actually did a pretty good job of faking the newspaper, but there's a phone number and it says, if Trivette answers, just tell him and he will take a message or meet you himself. In fact, Ranger Walker might indeed be able to make it as Cherokee Instinct. Oh man, I wish we could read this article more clearly.
When are the Blu-ray HD remasters
I know. Release.
CBS, we need the Walker Blu-ray releases so we can read stuff like this. Come on.
Release the Aaron Norris cut.
Let's get the hashtag going here.
Wait, there was a reference to a bar there called the Black Fly. Did you see that?
Nice.
No. I think we can consider that a bar reference.
A little bar called the Black Fly.
There we go. It's a bar name.
All right. Add that to our hashtags, Evan.
We got to take every bar name we can get at this point. They're becoming
kind of hard to find.
Rare. Yeah.
And it was there. It was there in print. I mean...
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
What are we doing?
This guy calls in to Ranger headquarters. He does just what the article suggests. He calls into Ranger headquarters and Trivette picks up because Walker's not available. And this guy's like, I got something about this serial killer and I need to talk to somebody. And Trivette's like, well, you can talk to me. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it over the phone. Come meet me at this address. And Trivette's like, sounds fishy, but I won't call in backup. I'll just go.
Yeah. Apparently the guy, he says he's Sergeant Bill Douglas. He apparently has been retired for a few years and thinks he has information. Doesn't trust disclosing it over the phone because you never know who's listening.
Absolutely. So, Trent then goes to visit his family church where his father was the pastor for many years. And his father's name, Thunder Malloy, has been painted over with the new pastor, who's Roscoe Jones. He goes in to get a little bit of advice from Roscoe.
He's like, my brother, he thinks I'm the biggest jerk in the entire universe. Being in the army was a lot easier than being with my family. And then Roscoe's like, well, to whom much is given, much will be required. And then both of them are like, Luke, chapter 12.
Nailed it.
Crushed.
And he knows the scripture as well as karate.
He's the son of a preacher man.
And Roscoe's kind of like, look, you've got a lot of burdens, but you've got a lot of gifts. What's going to win out?
Right. And Trent's all like, you know what? I do have gifts. My gift is teaching karate.
That's what he kind of gets to later. But before he can really get to that, we flash to another scene. And Trivette, he's gone to visit Sergeant Bill Douglas. And he knocks on the door, and we peek inside, and we see a gun pointed at the door. And Trivette's like, just waiting to interview this guy. And then he gets shot through the door.
Twice. 2 times.
Like, there's no doubt he's not wearing a vest. Like, he's out. And then they show him, like, struggling to survive against the wall for way too long.
No.
Yeah,
Shout out to Clarence Gilliard's
Death face.
Well, yeah. I mean, this was like his only opportunity to act in this episode was his right? I mean, I would take the opportunity to do exactly what he did. He milked that death.
He sure did.
He was like,
slow-mo, grainy footage. Oh,
his back was up against the wall, but he like slowly let himself down to the ground. I mean, if you get shot, I think you're just down on the ground, right?
No, man. He's a Texas Ranger. It takes him a long time to get hurt.
And then he even fooled the cops that showed up later. They thought he was dead.
So there's a commercial break where we think that Trivette's dead, but then they come back and some cops immediately show up on the scene. I guess they heard shots fired and came, but like the odds of that happening seem incredibly slim. And they encounter Trivette in the hallway, and one guy bends down to just take a pulse on Trivette. And he looks at the other guy and just like shakes his head. And I'm like, what?
It's like, we know we didn't kill off Trivette.
Like, there's no way he's dead. So, like, who's teaching this guy to take vitals? My God.
So then they go into the apartment and they're like, oh man, Sergeant Bill Douglas was killed.
Oh, he's dead too.
So we're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, that probably was like the cop killer found out about this guy squealing and decided to off both him and Trivette, who was going to come take this guy's statement. And then while they're like, oh, this guy's dead, Trivette like gurgles or something. And they're like, oh, he's still alive. Get an ambulance.
And that's when they call officer down, get an ambulance.
Right.
Yeah.
Not after they took his pulse.
Right. Not after they encountered a Texas Ranger dead or dying in the hall. Anyways, so into the ER scene, and this scene is the most like intense hospital scene we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never operated in a ER team, but I feel like this is really channeling like the ER TV show. You know?
Yeah. That's what
They like had all of the terminology down. I was particularly impressed when they mentioned that he had 2 GSWs, gunshot wounds. One was through, and then they rolled him over, and they had like put a blood spot underneath him where one of the bullets went through. Like, shout out to the
prosthetics department.
Well, also I would say, like, would it be Mignon, the script supervisor, making sure that this continuity makes sense?
It's quite possible. I mean, I also particularly liked how they slammed his head through the double doors of the hospital. It was like they were taking kind of a little too much glee. Like, those doors are meant to kind of just get out of the way, but they were just like, bam!
They had to use the defibrillator, you know, and we got to see all the hospital tricks pulled out. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah. And they revived him in about 30 seconds.
And so he's like in a coma, of course. And, Walker shows up at the hospital just in time for the doctor to be briefing CD and Alex. You know, she's like, oh, he'll be fine, Alex. And the doctor's like, well, I wouldn't say that, but
right. This doc, what? No, doc. He's like, oh no, these next 48 hours are really crucial. So he's essentially saying like, he may die. And this doctor, he's like 18.
Doogie Howser.
Right. My favorite part though is Walker's like, he asks this doctor who may or may not know all this information. He's like, what caliber was it? And this young doctor's like, probably a 38.
What is Texas? Even if he's a doctor, he knows all about guns. Yeah.
Good point, Bob. Good point.
All right. Yeah. See, again, this is another reason why I'm not qualified to be doing this podcast.
Well, none of us are really.
Oh yeah. And CD and Trivette, they've got a long history, and CD likes sending Trivette on snipe hunts and pranking him and all that stuff. But the love is there for sure. And so CD's real shook up, and he basically does what any victim does in Walker when Walker shows up on the case. He says, "Well, Walker, I trusted you bring this guy in, and if you don't, that's okay with me. Just find him."
Right. So now Walker, his leash is off, and mainly the whole point of shooting Trivette was to up the stakes for Walker, taking down the bad guy.
I think also to foreshadowing, of course, that Walker might need some help later on this episode.
Okay, maybe make a little room for some Sons of Thunder. So we cut to the Malloy house, and Trent, he thought about what he did, going to the dojo and asking the guys to beat his brother up.
Yeah, he basically did like the least cool thing he could have done.
He went up to Tommy's room. He said, "Tommy, I overstepped, man. I'm so sorry, and I'm not trying to be dad, but the only way we're going to get through this is if we work together." And Tommy's like, "Damn straight you're not dad, but that's cool. Let's work together." And then they start like this weird, like midnight
so
karate training montage.
It's
and like
so dumb.
They're out in the front lawn, like doing karate. And then like his mom and the two younger kids are watching them like fight on the front yard to triumphant music. And it's kind of like, what is happening?
That's definitely going to be the gift of the week. It has to be. And the mother watching them being like, he's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm so glad Trent is back to help out around the house. All he's doing is teaching my kids how to fight. That's it.
Right. And yeah, keep in mind that Thunder was the pastor of the church. His dad was a preacher.
Right. If you get slapped on one side of the face, you turn the other cheek, but you turn it in the form of a roundhouse kick.
Yeah.
Well, after years of the show beating up on Trivette and using him as the butt of every joke in the end of Walker, Texas Ranger episodes, I think this next scene is trying to make up for that. And this next scene is my favorite scene in the episode, hands down.
For your consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it is. A sob story.
So we pan back to Trivette's hospital bed, and CD is sitting next to him, and this is literally Noble Willingham's like shot at a primetime Emmy. He's like, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
Right?
The gloves are off.
Yeah.
There's a lot of "Don't you die on me, Jimmy."
Yeah.
And if I had a son, I'd want him to be like you.
I'd give you a hard time over the years. It's like, yeah, you rip on him all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
But yeah, no, like CD though, we can tell that he really does love Jimmy. He does love him, and that's why he teases him. At least that's what he tells himself.
And the waterworks, he's sobbing.
Oh,
I think
man.
his glasses start to fog up towards the end there.
Oh, yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah,
huh?
I mean, this performance, Noble Willingham definitely gets the best performance, best acting performance.
Yeah.
Well, it's up there with Clarence Gilliard's death.
I would say, or the villain of this episode, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Dark horse.
I've
Dark
got some
horse.
thoughts there.
Well, all right, we're stalling here. So, so CD, he's sad. We go back to Walker's desk where Alex and Walker are comparing the guns used in the killings of the cops from the previous episode and the gun that was used to shoot Trivette. And they notice it's a different gun.
Yeah, this whole thing is such a waste of time. This
Right.
whole scene. So what happens? They figure out that they're different guns.
Right.
And then so Walker's like, I'm going to go talk to somebody. And I was like, oh, it's a shakedown, right? He's going to like this place that looks like a bar or a diner. I'm like, shakedown. And he goes in there and it's the psychiatrist from last episode who goes through the whole process of explaining why, well, he didn't shoot Trivette with the same gun because that wasn't part of the plan. And now the plan has been broken and everything's on the table and, who knows what's going to happen.
Right. This is how serial killers work. I'm going to tell you all about serial killers.
God, I'm like, God, get on with it.
So yeah, she's saying, this is sort of a opportunistic shooting and, this serial killer, he's off the handle now. This wasn't part of his plan. And so we flash to
Zoom on Walker's face to the next scene.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
through his face to the next scene.
So we go to the bad guy's lair, and he just starts throwing stuff around. And it's a classic lair. It's like a multi-story building where no one would ever notice him there. It's got like catwalks everywhere and fire escapes and industrial equipment that he just can throw everywhere. So he throws his Radio Shack police scanner on the ground and he stabs his knife into Carlos's picture and leaves it there.
Brutal. Like this huge knife.
Cut to the mall.
Back at the mall, there's some girl who like stole some scarves from some upscale store, and the owner of the store is like, hey, Trent, she stole this stuff. Arrest her. And they're kind of laughing about it. Right?
Yeah, the girl's like, wait, that scarf was $300? Tell me who's really robbing who now. And it's like, no, you're still robbing her.
Yeah, you don't know what kind of fabric that's made out of. It's probably denim. Okay. Yeah. So I guess Trent must have called Carlos to come in to arrest this girl?
Well, I didn't think of that. I just assumed he was just stopping by, you know?
Yeah,
okay.
It's kind of all that Carlos does. Carlos has no partner for some reason, but he's got his own patrol car.
He's a lone wolf, you might say.
And exactly. And all he does is just cruise around and follow Trent. And Trent's doing even less exciting stuff. He's a mall cop.
Yeah. So Carlos, they're all laughing about this girl who stole something. And we see the murderer's boots, right?
Oh, yeah. The murderer is trailing Carlos into the mall in his ridiculous boots with his like floor length gray and black striped trench coat.
It's a duster,
God.
Right? I think a duster.
And he's in hot pursuit of his quarry, which is Carlos. And just as Carlos comes up to Trent realizes there's some crazy guy behind him with a gun. And just the guy pulls out his gun and trains his laser sight. Trent is able to push the two of them through a glass window just in time to avoid the bullet.
Essentially, Trent saved Carlos' life from being shot from this guy, and the guy got away.
So they go back into Walker's office to give a statement of what happened. And Trent gives a full-on description of this dude. And Carlos just sits there like he knows what's up.
Walker sees right through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Walker's like, okay, who is this guy? And Carlos is like, well, it should be Rod Barkley. He's a Metro cop, but he should be in prison.
And Walker's like, okay, pulls up the phone. Alex, pull the file on him. And so then Carlos jumps into like a full-on flashback of like part of the thing we saw in the last episode, right?
I think it just went back to the actual scene of the original crime. He was a hothead, all right? He was a street cop.
He was a Metro cop.
Yeah, he went after a perp and roughed him up real good.
Yeah, they got into a little high pursuit. And you know how those chases go, you know. You're just hopped up on adrenaline. And so they finally go through this car chase, and Rod Barkley gets the perp out of the car. The perp's like, yo, man, what gives? And he's like, I'll show you what gives. And then he just like goes into full on crazy mode. His eyes bug out. He whips out his nightstick and starts wrecking this kid. And everyone's like, what?
Yeah, like Carlos and all the other cops are like just standing there watching this go down for a while. They're like, well, maybe it'll teach him a lesson.
And then, he was going to fight the charges in court, but then he learned that he wasn't going to get any support from the witnesses there because they saw how crazy the guy was. And he just took his deal.
I love how Carlos is like, he put it out and took 6 to 10 with a deadly.
Yeah. So we cut back to him, and he's back at his lair, and he is setting out. Honestly, it's a bomb, but it actually looks like a miniature like stove for like mice or something. It looks like something you should go in a dollhouse. It's like really intricate. It's got this green light, and it's very clearly labeled that when the green light's on, it's engaged. So he arms his little bomb there, and then walks across the catwalk. Just as the cops are arriving, these first cops on the scene, I'm like, wait, Walker's not there? Why is Walker not even there?
Right. I'm like, are these guys just going to get blown away?
Right. And then Walker shows up just as the guy's about to kick through the door, and Walker pushes the guy out of the way as the door explodes. The explosion only takes out kind of the door. It doesn't take out the wall. So it's more like a toy bomb.
Well, he's toying with his victims.
Okay. No.
It's all head games.
So after that booby trap, Walker just walks right into the place. Everyone else is probably like, oh my God, a bomb just went off. We have to do all this.
Maybe we should check the foundation before we go into the room.
Or like, I almost died. Let's sort of regroup after we were almost blown up. And Walker's just like, yeah, no, I'm going to go in and just check this place out.
Yeah.
There can't possibly be another bomb in here. So I'm just going to walk around cavalier. He sees his little hit list board there with X's through their faces and a giant knife in Carlos's face, at which point he realizes Carlos is in danger. To this, I would say, why did Carlos not say, well, everyone else who has been killed was there that night, as was I?
Yeah, they could have taken out like 4 scenes and added that one line. This episode would already have been better.
So yeah, like Carlos is just hanging out with the Malloy family in their living room. And he's like, yeah, you know, I should probably get back to work. I don't know. And Trent's like, I'll walk you out. And just as he's walking out, the killer's there about to shoot everybody. And just as he's about to pull the trigger, Walker's truck rear ends his car and he drops his gun.
It's amazing. It was so good.
Pretty epic.
So we're off to a car chase and we're like, heck yeah.
Yeah, they do a little bit of a car chase and Trent is like, come on, Carlos, let's go. And they jump in Carlos's car and they're in hot pursuit too.
Yeah, so the cars pull up at some kind of power plant tower or something, right? And the bad guy gets out and starts running up and Walker follows him up the stairs behind him and they're doing like a shoot off down these metal grates and stuff. And then Carlos and Trent, they pull up separately and they also start following, but they're a little ways behind.
And just as they get up like maybe one flight of stairs, Carlos is like, oh, I can't go any further. I can't. Trent's like, what is wrong? And Carlos is like, I'm so afraid of heights. I can't do it. And Trent's like, well, we've been friends for how long? And I've never known this about you. But okay.
That's cool, man. Just stay here. It's kind of what he was like. Right. And then they show this awesome shot of Carlos and his face is looking through like the grates of this tower. And he has like a face of fear. He's like, oh, wow. And it zooms out.
The sounds are like in the Lord of the Rings when like there's like that weird freaky zoom thing that happens. And you hear like these whispers like,
yeah.
It was like
that's going in your
my precious.
Right. Boy, his fear is intense. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Anyways, Walker gets up to the rooftop and he's lost the bad guy. And the bad guy comes out from behind a corner and levels his gun right at Walker before Walker even knows he's there. And just as Walker's about to turn around, the guy pulls the trigger, but Trent like ninja kicks his hand. His aim is messed up and it shoots Walker in the shoulder.
And we're like, what? Walker got shot too?
Yeah, Walker and Trivette both get shot in this episode.
So Trent quickly dispatches this guy with like a couple of kicks and a throat punch or something like that. And the guy's down. And then he's about to go check on Walker. And the guy springs up out of nowhere like a cobra.
No mercy. Yeah. That was a tiger roar right there.
So they're like fighting. And then, of course, they inevitably end up on this catwalk. And Trent clearly has the upper hand in fighting style because, as we know, he's been training in the military for years now.
But Barkley has the upper hand in height and crazy.
Yeah, and he doesn't really use the height to his advantage, but right at the end of the fight, he's like, well, I better not let them take me in. I'm just going to engage in full-on nutso mode. And he has like a brief flashback to when he beat that kid, and his eyes get super bugged out and crazy. And then he basically bear hugs Trent, and through some fancy editing techniques, we're led to believe that they careened over the edge of the catwalk.
This fight was actually pretty awesome. And they showed some awesome shots from underneath the catwalk of their shadows fighting. And it was really well done.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Until Barkley and Trent are falling off the side of this catwalk. And we're like, are they both going to die? What's up?
The edit there was so weird. I feel like they just threw in some other shot for like a half a second. Then immediately Walker's hand reaches out and grabs Trent's ankle, but we still don't know what happened until it really pans out. Even then, you never see the three of them hanging from each other.
Right. So we're just left to assume that they fell over the edge and Walker caught them with one arm and his other hand is all bloody and he's holding on to the other ledge and he can barely hold them.
And Barkley just like lets go and falls forever.
Yeah, pretty much forever.
It's like the Die Hard ending, right?
Yeah, except he wasn't falling 40 stories or whatever, but he just kept going.
Yeah, Barkley, he's falling, but Trent is still being held up by Walker off this catwalk, and Walker's losing his grip because he only has one hand. But this is kind of similar to our first podcast.
A little bit, although Trent's like, if you don't let me go, you're going to come down with me.
Yeah.
And Trent is like totally at peace with just like biting the big one.
Yeah.
He's like,
He's had a good run.
like, just let me go, man. Just let me go.
But all of a sudden, we see another hand come on and grab Trent's other boot, and it's Carlos made it onto the sketchy catwalk with his fear of heights.
He conquered his fear.
Yep. Plus, we all knew that was going to happen anyway.
I think he's just faking it.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to get out of work.
I mean, he was afraid. If you're afraid of heights, do you jump in a hot air balloon? No.
He was trying to get attention from Walker. And now he got even more because they're like, oh, looks like you got over your fear of heights. And they're like, look, he's cool. He conquered his fear of heights. Otherwise, he would just been a boring cop who just went up there. And we wouldn't be talking about this right now.
Mm-hmm. We still shouldn't be. All right. So back at...
Well, before we even get to this, I need to step in and just say, I thought the episode was over. Thought, hey, that's a good place to end. But then I was like, oh, wait, we have all these other stories.
Yeah, come on now.
Yeah, so we pan over to St. Matthew's Hospital, and Trivette wakes up, and Walker, who has just been shot.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, he's standing there with no bandages, no nothing. Apparently, his wound just healed already.
Yeah, he's fine. He Wolverined it.
Walker just needed the ride to the hospital, and he healed up pretty
fully
quick.
heal.
Yeah.
Walker's like, welcome back, partner. And Trevette's like, yeah, I might need a couple of days off. And they're like, what? Do they really have to give Trivette that line? Come on, man.
Another good time to end the episode right here.
Yep, another good possible ending. But
Keep it rolling. Trent's heading out to the graveyard, isn't he, at this point?
He's back, and he is his father's son.
I thought they were going to bring the song back. Unfortunately, they did not.
They didn't bring the song back. But yeah, so he goes and visits his dad's grave, Thunder Malloy. And he's like, look, man, I've got some pretty big shoes to fill. But you know what? That's the best thing you could have left me. The only way I can help the family is to do it my way. That's what you taught me. And then they show like some glimmers of the sun, as almost like as if his dad's like communicating with him, right?
No, his dad's communicating to the dog.
It was good to see Moses.
Yeah, and the dog still has Thunder's hat. The
Yeah,
dog hasn't put down Thunder's hat since he
For
died.
like weeks.
Yeah, this is why what I'm saying here is that dog is Thunder.
I think
Remember?
so.
That's what I was saying.
I think so, yeah.
The dog's like, oh no, like I'm here. You don't need to talk to the grave.
Back to the gym, and Walker and Trent, they're sparring again. And Trent's all like, yo, man, how's that shoulder? And Walker just like sucker punched him in the face. Walker's like, I've been thinking about your future. And Trent's like, well, I have too. You know what, Trent? You're like almost 40, and you probably got a military pension, and you have a family to take care of. You really shouldn't be having this sort of crisis of self right now. You should just do what you have to do, but you do you, man. They're like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to do. And Walker's like, well, I know what you should do. And they're like, let's say it at the same time. and Walker goes, karate teacher. And Trent goes, private investigator.
Yeah. And then we flash to a montage of them building a dojo. There's a lot of like joking around, like Walker's like painting Alex's face, and Trevette's actually clowning around with CD. He actually pranked CD, which was good. Glad he got CD back. Yeah.
Classic.
They're glad to see that they're on speaking terms again. And at the end, Trent pulls down this sheet that was covering the logo to Thunder Karate School. And then Carlos kind of comes over and he's like, hey, man, I'm glad you got this school started, man. There's a lot of people out there who need the martial arts. Then Trent turns to Carlos and goes, that's not all they need. And he holds up the Holy Bible.
Oh,
yeah, of course.
That was one of my favorite things, too.
Yeah.
This scene had like a series finale feel to it.
It did. It
like
really.
All the characters, they have like close-ups of them like, oh, yeah, joking around.
Yeah, they didn't even need to make the mini series because this was it. This is all we
just
needed.
wrap it up.
Wow.
You think it's over, but it's not.
Nope. So we see Trent and his little brother Tommy walking down the street, and the sensei from the bad guy karate school pulls up. He's in like this red convertible
With all his students,
and he's just cruising around with these 3 teenage kids.
That's so sketchy.
Like, what are you doing? And they're basically just doing a drive-by of Thunder Karate to give him a hard time.
Yes, it was very Karate Kid. 6 months later, we're back at the karate class, and Trent is teaching these kids karate, and ha, hoo-ha.
He's got like 100 kids in a class.
He's also got a good recruiter in Walker. His mom, I guess, is like answering the phone. So she's like, oh, cover, Thunder Karate School. But then there's a second phone line that they have there that's like the bat phone or something. And the mom picks it up, and she's like, we got one. And it's like his private investigator phone, and Trent's got his first case, and she answered it, Trent Malloy, when all else fails. By the way, I'm Trent's mom.
Right.
And to kind of tie up the whole thing nicely, Thunder Malloy comes back from the dead.
Oh, he's like superimposed. It's like a Mufasa moment.
Yeah, him at his pulpit, speaking some scripture that ties everything together nicely.
Well, that about sums up this episode. We'd love to give a shout out to our friend and collaborator, Adam Lauritsen, who's been drawing the amazing Walkerstrations on our social media. Be sure to check out his other art on Instagram at @Imagination_Run_Amok. When we come back, it'll be time for us each to rate Sons of Thunder Part 2 on a scale of 0 to 10 boots to the face, resulting in our patented Roundhouse Roulette episode rating, complete results of which are available on our website, roundhouseroulette.com. Don't go away.
Evan, I don't know if you can hear me or not. It's your brother, AD. I just wanted to talk to you. I want to apologize for kidding you so damn much. It's just, you're an easy target, you know? I mean, let's face it, you're an honest-to-God nerd. You collect samples of bird droppings, for gosh sakes. Well, I kid you, but I don't mean anything. I don't mean anything by it. You're a mighty good fella. I mean, you're a good person, and you're a talented biologist, and the best brother this old codger could ever ask for. Oh, don't you die on me! Don't you go die on me, Evie!
AD?
Great, jumping Jiminy Crickets! You's be alive!
Why wouldn't I be? I didn't hear you there with my earbuds in. What were you talking about?
Nothing of importance. What are you doing lying in that damn hospital bed if you've got a clean bill of health?
Well, after the holidays, I was short on cash, so I signed up for a sleep study in the purple room at St. Matthew's Hospital. They were monitoring my vitals, and I listened to episodes of Roundhouse Roulette.
Well, I'll be.
Well, speaking of, we here at Roundhouse Roulette have been pledging to deliver the Light of Walker, Texas Ranger to the world. If you'd like to join us in that mission, please share the podcast with a friend or leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts. It truly helps other Walkerites find it. If you'd like to further support the show, be sure to check out our fine apparel and vintage action figures. Ooh. You can find those at roundhouseroulette.com or join the fun on our Patreon page. Most importantly, though, we thank you for listening.
Well, let's get you back to the podcast, you big geek.
I guess you're right, AD. Perhaps we can extrapolate some findings for the sleep study on our way back to the cast.
Gosh, I liked you better when you were dead.
All right, well, time to figure out what we thought about this episode.
What do you think of this one, Bob?
Well, as I had feared, the second half of this did not really stand up to the first. This had so many cuts and so many storylines and so much crap that could have just been dropped out of it. And no fights. You had sort of a car chase. It wasn't really doing much for me. And yeah, it could have ended 4 times before it did. I don't know about you guys, but I counted 0 hot air balloon chases. So
yeah,
I'm giving this one a 4. And I think that might be generous.
Yeah, I think you might be a bit generous there, Bob. This one was pretty rough. I definitely agree that this bad guy was freaking awesome. He was completely nuts. He's got his little lair. He makes bombs. He was like a bad cop that like flew off the handle.
Yeah.
And he has like crazy mode that he can engage. He also bested Walker and shot him in the back and took out Trivette. So he took out Walker and Trivette in the same episode. So like,
that's a good point.
This guy is like legend status. Then he's like, well, they'll never take me alive. I guess I'll take this square out with me. Bear hugs a guy and jumps off a balcony with him. Like, yeah, that guy's legit. And not to mention his sick boots. But anyways, he cannot make up for the fact that this episode was kind of a dumpster fire. And I will throw this out there. This is my hot take. Trent is the worst.
That's the take.
he's so lame. Carlos, any scene with Carlos in it, you're like, oh, Carlos is cool. Trent is just a total dweeb. So I'm giving this one a 3. I think it was pretty much garbage.
Oh, wow.
Except for the bad guy. I'd love to see the bad guy in another episode, but they killed him.
As you guys know, the previous episode I gave a 10 because of that hot air balloon. That stunt was amazing. There were some other things that were passable in the last episode, but really probably my favorite scene in this episode was CD crying over Trivette. I mean, and then Walker gets shot. He doesn't deal any justice out. So as far as Walker action, no. So obviously I can't give this episode a 10.
No.
But can I give it a 9?
I will kick you out of this Zoom meeting so fast.
Trivette got shot and was in the hospital, and Walker got shot and didn't do any fighting. It was horrible.
But if you think of it as part of the other episode and part of Walker history,
I don't like where this is going.
And as far as this is a very important 2-part episode as far as the series goes, and if you're a fan of Walker Texas Ranger, would you only just have to watch the first part? The answer probably would be yes.
Yeah.
But I actually was thinking of giving this episode a 6. I think it's worth the watch if you've watched the other one, but it wasn't good.
If this episode came on TV and you were just like channel surfing and you're like, oh, Walker's on, and this episode came on, you would be so incredibly disappointed.
Yeah, you wouldn't recommend this to somebody. I can't give it I got to give it a 4. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Because I can't, in good conscience, recommend this episode to somebody to watch part 2. But at the same time, it's a historic episode. There are a few cool things in there. I don't hate Trent and Carlos. I think they can be fun. And they had to be set up somehow. And we saw how it was done. We just don't ever have to watch this episode again.
All right. Well, that gives this episode a generous rating of 3.666. Boots to the face. And I think we can all agree that it's about time for the Sons of Thunder to be released on DVD. Just saying. But, let us know what you think on social media or by emailing us at roundhouseroulette@gmail.com. When we come back, we'll spin that Roundhouse Roulette wheel and select our next episode. All right. You ready to spin that wheel, Bob?
Oh, it's been too long.
Bow to your sensei.
All right, here we go.
So it's season 4, episode 15, The Return of LaRue. And this is our first gander at one of the few repeating villains of Walker Texas Ranger lore.
Released on a technicality, convicted killer kidnapper Victor LaRue stays within the law as he attempts to avenge himself upon Walker and Alex.
Well, we hope you join us next time when we share our reactions to season 4, episode 15, The Return of LaRue. In the meantime, share your opinions with us on Facebook and Instagram at Roundhouse Roulette and on Twitter at Roundhouse Pod. And rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your fine podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next time,
may the eyes of the Ranger be upon you.
When you're in Texas, look behind you. Oh, 'cause that's where the Ranger's gonna be.